Yesterday, Bravado announced that they would be re-entering the local South African competitive CSGO scene. The last time we saw a Bravado team on local soil was end of 2017 before the lads headed over to America for Project Destiny, which lasted for a year throughout 2018. Early 2019 they were re-signed, or they were signed by Denial, and the Bravado roster hasn't existed since then. And now, March 2021, they've announced that they will be re-exploring CSGO as an option. They've created a team now led by Detrony. He's picked up 4 relatively uncut diamonds. There's a couple of experienced and known names in the team, but there's also quite a few young and up-and-coming individuals. So a very exciting roster and a very exciting time to have BVD re-entering the competitive space here in South Africa. I mean, when you think of local competitive Counter-Strike, the first org's name that should be coming to mind is Bravado. I mean, of course, for the people who have started following the scene more recently, within like the past year and a half, 2 years, won't be as familiar with the incredible legacy that Bravado holds in the local Counter-Strike scene. But for me, when I think of local Counter-Strike, competitive local CS, the first org's name that comes to mind is BVD. Then you have Energy, Damage Control. Of course, we've got the new guns, the new orgs who have come in over the past few years who are starting to stake their claims as well. But Bravado is historic when it comes to local Counter-Strike, and now they are re-entering the space, which is amazing for our scene, to say the least. To have such an illustrious org committing their resources to our scene again is just fantastic news. And Detrony, he's going to be leading, he's going to be at the helm of the team, which is also just great. I mean, the South African CSGO scene is so much better off with Bravado competing. So I'm going to be chatting a little bit about my thoughts about the roster, talking a bit about each individual player, and then about the project as a whole, or the project first and then in each individual. But it's just generally, the general consensus is very exciting, and really looking forward to seeing what this team can do. As I said, this is a hype video practically, because this team, it's just going to be great to see the boys in blue competing again, and have Detrony, playing for Bravado on local soil and committed to the cause, not like where he was standing in for Goliath, which is still great to see him competing, but this is something that he is personally invested in, and I'm really interested to see where he's going to be taking it. So, without further ado, let's talk about the team. First of all, one of the worst kept secrets. Of course, if you're sort of if you're even half in the loop, you would have heard about this one. I mean, it was kind of obvious that word was going to get out, because throughout building the project, he picked up a couple players from various other teams. Of course, the roster, before I start talking about the project for anybody who doesn't know, is Detrony at the top. Then he's got the Man, Flexeee, Wipeout, and EXE as the 4 other players who are going to be combining to make this roster, right? No coach or manager announced yet, but that's the team that's going to be competing. Now, all of those names should be known to you, of course. They're well-known individuals, some more so than others. A couple who are, there or thereabouts, but haven't really proven themselves yet, more like the likes of Wipeout and EXE. So the point being, as I go through those names, you'd be thinking DNMK, X Energy, Royalty as well for EXE. So there were a couple of different teams that these players came from to join up into this roster. So that means the word had gotten out, because obviously when those players approached their managers and their teams and started to discuss the potential of the change, then that's 4 other individuals who know, and they tell their close friends. So word got out pretty quickly that this was actually going to be happening. Was a great announcement that came through, got a lot of support as well, but not the best kept secret. As I said, was always going to be tough to keep under wraps. That this team was going to be announced. As I said, just amazing to have Bravado back in the space here, competing locally again, and hopefully this is something that's feasible for the org as well, that they get some sort of return out of this, because we've actually seen Bravado take a bit of a different course over the past year and a half, 2 years. They've been very focused on their streamers, their Fortnite boys as well. Their Fortnite lads have been getting a lot of attention, creating a lot of content, a lot of hype as well. So for them to now be re-entering CSGO, is clearly a bit of a risk for them, because it's going back to their roots, but it's also not sticking to the direction that they were maybe taking. I mean, I'm just speaking off the cuff here, but I'm keen to see now what sort of return this is going to be having for the organization as well. Speaking about the roster, Detrony competing again, getting back in the mix here in local Counter-Strike, decided he wanted to build a team. Probably had that burning feeling inside of him still that he hadn't accomplished what he wanted to in terms of Counter-Strike. I mean, I think he's probably approaching 30 now, if he's not 30 years old already, which means Obviously, nobody really knows what the age cap is when it comes to competing in esports, but he's probably feeling like he's reaching that point now where if he still really wants to have a proper go at it, that he has to capitalize on the moment now. He has to commit to it now, and he has to give it everything he's got from this point, because maybe time might be, starting to pass, and the potential and the opportunities won't quite be there in 4 or 5 years from now. So he's having a big crack at it, and he's decided to build this project up from the ground up, right? He started from the bottom. He hasn't picked up established players who he's played with before, who has experience with. He didn't try and pick up, like, to my knowledge, like an elusive, some of his other ex-teammates, Fade's playing locally as well. We didn't see him go for any of, like, the stalwart type of players, like a Kani or something like that. He's actually gone. He wants to find individuals who have got all the potential but are pretty much unestablished players. Like I said, you got like Flexeee and the Man, who are definitely individuals everybody will know and quite familiar with their playstyles and what they bring to a team. But then there's also some unknown factors like Wipeout and EXE, who are still in the really early stages of their career. So Detrony decided, I'm going to build this project from the ground up. I'm going to start with some very unnurtured players who he can then mold into what he wants and bring everybody together as a unit through their growth, so that once they reach that point, everything is aligned, amalgamated, and is within one, right? Not just trying to find 5 established players and then craft them into something that might work. So if you think about it, like wax or something like that, or clay, you can really mold this team thinking about the great picture and the long-term type of thing, so that once they do reach that point, this is going to be a seriously competitive unit if they stay together. You're going to be learning so much from Detrony's experience, and he's going to be able to impart a lot of knowledge on these individuals as well. So ground up, young established players being brought into the mix here. And Detrony's certainly going to be accelerating their career, that's for sure. The one thing about this team is that Detrony's not necessarily going to be having that same sort of support structure behind him that he had in his previous rosters, or even the most recent Bravado team, that team that had Elusive, TC, even JT. These are like masterminds of Counter-Strike, and who have a lot of information and a lot of ideas that they can bring to the forefront. Maybe when the team is struggling or things aren't going their way, or it's time to try something new or different, there are always these outside or these extra voices he could rely on, the support structure, to help give him, the information that, he might need to make some certain decisions. Whereas coming into this team, he doesn't have that luxury. He's got the Man, who I'd imagine is going to be like the second voice in the team, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. But the point being right now is, outside of the Man, Flexeee, EXE, and Wipeout, I don't think are going to be contributing very much when it comes to ideas and how they should be approaching certain situations. Their role in the team is more to sort of grow and learn and understand and grow within themselves for the team, not so much contributing to what direction the team is going to be taking, in my opinion. So I think the Man is going to be that key second voice, but Detrony is not going to have that support structure, that same support structure that he was used to in his previous team. So that's going to be more responsibility on his shoulders, right? It's going to be tough for him in some situations, so he's going to have to dig deep and rely on himself to get out of those and to sort of find other solutions to this challenge. So I'm interested to see how that's going to be working out, because he knows the game very well. He's got all the experience in the world, but sometimes not having that support structure can definitely mount other challenges. At least, he's got Scent behind him, his brother, of course, the co-founder or founder of Bravado, along with Demi. So he's got that experience there in the wings, right? Which is always important, because Scent has also overcome multiple challenges, within the organization, life, and Counter-Strike. So plenty of experience there for him to rely on, I suppose, which definitely will help as well, having his brother there. On the flip side to that, shortage of support structure, is that there's no lack of crazy explosive skill in this team. Every single individual has been known to just be a monster in the server. There's literally not one weak link in this team. All 5 of them are mad fraggers, or have potential to be mad fraggers. Of course, there's no room for everybody to go absolutely crazy in a Counter-Strike team, but all of them have potential to do it. So there is no shortage of skill or mechanical ability in this team, which is, an exciting prospect that, Detrony might be the puppet master here, just sort of like stringing these guys around, giving them roles and objectives, of what they need to do, and then just letting them sort of go about their business. These guys are going to be monsters in the server. It's going to be very tough to go against this team when it comes to, trying to go toe-to-toe with their fragging ability. This team is loaded, man. This team is seriously loaded. Um, so yeah, that's certainly going to be a tough factor when you play against this Bravado team. One thing about BVD, right, is that the org is all or nothing. That's like Bravado's master. They will not take part in something unless they are there to be the best, unless they are there to compete for the first position, unless they're there to drive the ceiling even higher. They don't settle for mediocrity, and that's, I mean, even from the outside you can pick up on that, right? You've never had to have been a part of Bravado to know that that's sort of their mentality, is that they're there to be the best or they're not there at all. So the point is that this isn't going to be a half-assed team that sort of comes together to just, compete and scratch that itch a little bit, to be competitive and to play the game regularly and to have a team and, to play some events and maybe win some prize. No, this team is going to be, with Detrony at the helm, this team is going to be going for gold or nothing. They're definitely going to be competing and giving everything that they've got going into this project. So that's something else to keep in mind. I'm 99% sure they are going to be working their asses off to make sure that they can compete with the best, which of course is, ATK, Goliath, DNMK, Sinister 5, WRG, now the X Energy roster. These are the teams that they're going to be looking to comfortably, be beating and then going to number one in the country. That's going to be the goal here for this team. I mean, I say comfortably beating. That's going to be a tough ask. I mean, the competitive level in South African CS right now is higher than it's ever been before. I mean, when you think about Detrony's last time he competed, obviously there was the time with Goliath, but before that with Bravado, it was Bravado and Energy. And outside of that, they actually, Carbon maybe here or there, but it was a small project. There was nothing sustainable and long-term that would, a team that would consistently compete with them. And that's going to be different now in local CS. There's no easy games anymore in the Masters division, or when you reach the playoffs of ESEA. There's not going to be any more easy games. All these teams are working really hard. We're seeing salaries, lower tier salaries, of course, but just investments coming through further and more and greater investments in these orgs as well. So the level of competition is definitely increased, and it's probably going to be a bit of a readjustment for Detrony and for the Bravado organization, that it's not just like a one horse or a two horse race anymore. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see how they sort of reintegrate into the scene now that things have morphed and changed a little bit. Of course, the playing style has changed, the meta's changed, but Detrony will be on top of all of that, man. I mean, this guy's certainly been following the scene, and no doubt he's actually been working really hard behind closed doors as well. He's not the type of guy to be loud and sort of abrupt and telling everybody, what he's doing and how hard he's working. He's the guy who's just going to be like clocking in, getting the hours done, clocking out without anybody noticing. So that's sort of my thoughts on the team in general. I mean, there's still a lot of things to discuss and talk about. I'm going to try and keep the video a little bit shorter today, so going to be shifting now from talking about each individual a little bit more than the team as a whole. And I suppose, obviously, the first person that I'm going to be talking about is Detrony. Now, you could argue, you could make a point in case that Detrony is like the best Counter-Strike player that South Africa has ever had. I mean, obviously Sonic is the first name that you're going to be competing that with, and then you can throw JT in there when you start looking at other elements of what makes the best Counter-Strike player. So not just mechanical skill, obviously there's way more, and then we have the likes of, Black Poison, Domster, but Detrony is up there with the best Counter-Strike players South Africa has ever, the best esports players South Africa has ever produced, hands down, no doubt about it. He's actually, of course, competed internationally with the Project Destiny. They competed in international lands and events. They actually made a mark as well, and a couple as well, notably the DreamHack, what was it, Stockholm, I think it was the Jean-Ocuping, my enunciation is trash, but the event in Sweden, the DreamHack Open Winter that they competed in 2018, where they came second after losing to ENCE in the finals, but beat, G2, Optic. There was that one Swedish team that they beat in the semi-final as well. So, point being, he's had an illustrious career, and he's achieved some great things so far. And so Detrony, I mean, not much you need to say about this guy. The one thing I will say that's kind of surprised me is a couple people I've spoken to have said, like, nah, he's going to get a shock when he comes back and competes, and that he's going to struggle a lot more than he used to. And they've compared him to some other players who have, sort of started playing again. And I think that those people have a bit of a shock coming, to be honest with you. I think that Detrony, hands down, he's not going to struggle to compete with the best AWPers in the country once again. The likes of Slowy, for example. Detrony's definitely going to be going toe-to-toe. All of the top AWPers and all the top teams are going to have their work cut out for them coming into this, or going up against this new Bravado roster. Detrony, I have no doubt in my mind he is still going to be as good as he ever was, and probably with the drive that he has now as well. I mean, who knows what sort of heights he can reach from this point. So I'm really looking forward to seeing, where Detrony is going to be going from an individual perspective, because he's got a lot of responsibility on his shoulders as well now as the committed IGL, the committed, the front of the team now, the face of this roster. This is also a bit of a personal project for him, as I said, because he's reaching the end stages perhaps of his career. I mean, I say end stages, who knows how long that can be, but 30 to 35 is generally, it seems, where that fall off starts to occur after 35. So from a personal capacity, I think that Detrony really wants to make something of this opportunity. And so I'm keen to see what sort of heights he can reach from an individual point of view. I mean, he's a fierce competitor, is Detrony. Hates losing. He's going to do everything he can to try and get this team to the best in the country. So yeah, it's going to be very cool to see how he sort of goes about his business. One of the fastest AWPers in the country, that we've ever had, for sure. And now he's working with some young uncut diamonds. As I said earlier, he's got these players who he can sort of craft and mold. So, I mean, he can sort of imprint his vision now, right? It's not like a collection of 5 established players coming together trying to determine the driving force and sort of the end goal here. He is the one within himself who's going to have determined that and try and work in towards that direction. I mean, taking on the responsibility of AWP and IGL, that's quite a lot to handle for one person. But obviously, Detrony, with this team, when you look at these individuals, there's no other name in the roster that can sort of take on that responsibility as the IGL, right? So it's like, it's sort of do or die in that regard. There's no other options. Moving across to the second player, I'm going to sort of go in, I don't know, not in order of experience. I guess I'd go with Flexeee next, but I'm going to talk about the man now. Now, of course, he played for DNMK before this, Lionheart before that, competed in Energy as well. He's sort of been around for a while now. I mean, won Comic-Con 2019 with that Energy team as well. So the man's actually got some experience. I mean, he actually even subbed in for Goliath for an event. I can't remember exactly when it was. Must have been in 2019 as well, when Detrony was sort of a long-term stand-in for that Goliath team. And the man subbed in, and Detrony actually tweeted after the event that he really liked what he saw in the man, and that, like, I can't remember, but the sentiment of the message was like, a team would be lucky to have this guy. He's a very good teammate, and he thinks that the man has a bright future. So obviously that stuck with him, and as the years went by and Detrony decided to start this new project, the man was one of the first names that sort of came to mind for him to pick up. And so here we go. The man it's his second, it's going to be the second voice in the team. It's going to be the guy who's probably he relies on, that's going to be right behind him, constantly making sure that he's got that extra support, right? I mean, I think the man's going to be taking on a lot more responsibility in this team than he's ever had to in the teams before. I think he's always been a contributor, but it's never been a thing where it's like he's now committed as the second voice in the team, and not only committed, but it's really important that he owns that role and that he takes on that responsibility, and that he's happy and comfortable in that position. Because without him there as the second voice, it's just going to be Detrony, and I don't think any team can feasibly be competitive with just one person sort of calling the shots. You need to have input from other places. I mean, that's not just an esports or a CS thing, that's in life in general, work, sport, social, whatever it is. It's always good to have different and more ideas being contributed to a pool, so you see things from different perspectives and you don't get one-dimensional. So that's going to be, for me, that's one of the keys for this Bravado team if they're going to be successful, is whether or not the man can truly fulfill that potential of the second voice. I mean, never really asked too many questions about to the man's teammates about what he brings in that regard, but you know his personality. He's like louder and more flamboyant, and the guy who's not afraid to have his voice heard. And in this team, he's going to have to embrace that mentality, if you will. So yeah, I'm keen to see how the man is going to be morphing. I think he's ready for this now. After the past 2 years of sort of pugging his way through, he's then reached a bit more of like a professional standard. I think he understands his game really well now as well. I think he's very comfortable within his own game and his strengths and his weaknesses. So I think he's ready for this move now. I think the past few years have been building up to this moment for the man, and I'm excited, man. I think that I think he deserves this opportunity, actually. I think he's worked really hard when you look at how much time he's put in from an individual perspective over the past few years and how much he's committed. He absolutely deserves this opportunity. I think that he's going to go a long way with this team, actually. And I'm keen to see how it works out. I think the one thing about Sean is it's really good to have somebody who's, I don't want to say, more respected than him in the team, but somebody of like Detrony's, sort of stature. To have someone of Detrony's stature in the team is going to keep the man aligned a little bit better than when he's just playing with like 4 people who are sort of on his level in terms of a respect standard. Like in DNMK, for example, I think he probably felt like he was on par with everybody else, sort of thing. So with that in mind, it's sort of, you mentally then are not afraid to speak your mind and be open and, maybe have a few words with somebody and really push your point home. And, I'm just speaking off the cuff here, but coming into this team with Bravado now, he's probably going to be a little bit more respectful in terms of, playing under Detrony. I'm going to listen to what he says. I'm not going to fight with anybody or with what he says, because, he probably knows more what he's talking about than I do. That's just my 2 cents. I mean, take it if you will. That's how I feel. I think it's going to be better for the man to have somebody like Detrony as his IGL and his leader. And as I said, I just think it'll keep him a little bit more aligned and focused on the goal. So I think it's actually going to be good for him. We'll see how that ends up playing out. But yeah, moving on to the next player, talking about Flexeee now. This is a very interesting choice, the Flexeee option. Now, Flexee's been a stalwart in South African Counter-Strike for actually the longest of times, and he was actually one of the biggest competitors against Bravado, through 2017. He played in that Energy team. They went toe-to-toe in both ESL Africa seasons. Energy lost the first season, then Energy won the second season on LAN, where Energy beat them like 3-0, I think it was. So Flexee's, he knows what it's like to go up against Detrony. I mean, Flip, he even played against Bravado in DreamHack Mumbai, where he went over to India, and then that Energy versus Bravado rivalry, they played against each other. So they've played against one another a lot. Now they find themselves on the same team. As I said, Flexee's been around for a while, a couple of years now. He's got experience, even though he's still young. I mean, I would guess he's probably like 23 only, so he's still a very young individual. So it's quite rare to have so much experience behind you and still be so young. And that's sort of Flexee's niche right now. The one thing I will say is they need to make sure that they can get Flexeee comfortable, because that's the key to actually extracting the most out of Flexeee, is when he's in environments in which he's completely comfortable and feels like he can be himself and he can focus on his game. There's been times in teams gone by where it's probably been a bit of a volatile environment for him in the team that he's been, and so I don't think that actually suits Flexee's personality. I think it's really important for him to be in a calm, serene, comfortable environment, and that's where we're probably going to be seeing the most of him. I mean, this guy has an incredible Counter-Strike brain. I mean, he reads the game so well, he understands the game so well, and he also has his own take on things, which is really important. As I discussed earlier, different perspectives are always important to increase the value, make sure things aren't one-dimensional. You can get that from Flexeee if he's very comfortable. So he's another key in this team when it comes to experience and contributing. The reason that I put the man as the second voice ahead of Flexeee is because naturally Flexee's not as talkative, not as much of an introvert or sort of, giving in terms of contributing ideas to the discussion. You can get it from him if you ask him his perspective and his opinion, but he's not going to be the most outspoken guy who sort of, comes and gives you his take on things if it's not asked for. So, like I said, get Flexeee comfortable in this team. Make sure that he really feels, at home, and then we're going to be seeing how much he can really contribute to a team. The one thing I will say is that it feels like Flexeee, this I don't want to say that this is the be-all and end-all of his career, because that would definitely be a stretch, but this is what his career has been leading up to, in my opinion. All the teams, all the opportunities, everything that he's sort of had come and go, this is now the peak. This is the peak of his career, no doubt in my mind. And if this doesn't work out for him, where does he really go from here? Because he's climbed his way up the ladder. Like, this is the top of the ladder now, right? Like, where else can he, where else, what's further from here? I mean, you could say 80k, but it's sort of in the same level, right? I mean, from that point, you're just switching from top project to top project. If you're not making anything of that top project, you're eventually going to be discounted from future discussions. So yeah, I think it's really important that Flexeee capitalizes on this opportunity with BVD now. He's played for Energy a couple times. He played for Sinister 5 for a longer period. He's played with he's played with a bunch of different pros in the South African scene. I say pros, we use the word a bit loosely here in the country, but you get what I mean. And now he finds himself in the top organization, BVD, with Detrony. This is it now, Flexeee. This is the opportunity you have to take and make the most of. Because sometimes in life, we don't realize how big of an opportunity this is. I'm not saying this is what he's doing right now, but this is, for me, this is what can make or break Flexee's career. That's, as I said, that's extreme, but this can really take things to the next level for him. And if this doesn't go well, then I'm not sure, who's going to be looking at Flexeee as the next big pickup for their team. My 2 cents. We'll have to see how things end up playing out. I do think it's a good pickup, and I think he has a huge amount of potential in this roster. Let's see if it's going to be playing out for him. So the next 2 players are obviously the lesser known individuals that I'm going to be speaking about now. The first one I'm going to be talking about is EXE, who is a youngster. I mean, I think he might still be, I want to say 16, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say 17 in case he had his birthday recently, but I know he's somewhere within that range. He is very, very young, and he's in the premature stages of his career right now. Still very, very early days for him. Long road ahead. So much to learn, so much experience to gain. And what a better opportunity to do that than here under Bravado's banner, with Detrony, with Scent behind you, in this illustrious organization. This is an amazing opportunity for a young individual. I mean, there's actually very few individuals who get these sorts of opportunities so early on in their career. And props and kudos to EXE for getting his name thrown in the hat, right? And for making himself a noticeable name. Because he competed with Royalty previously, right? And he became the star player of that team, the hero of that team. Whenever you thought of Royalty, immediately, probably the first name that came to your mind was EXE, because of what an incredible star player he was and how much impact he had in the fragging department. I will say, it felt like he dropped off a little bit towards the end of last year. I mean, they had that really good run where they made like top 4 at the ROG Invitational, and then they had some good. They competed and they looked good in the VS Masters, if I remember correctly, and then I don't think they took part at Rage, but they looked good at the end of last year. Like, they were one of those teams that was actually, hey, is this actually going to be like a top 3 team in South Africa? And then from there, it seemed like they might have reached their peak, their ceiling, and they started to drop off a little bit. And whether that was EXE, dropping his game slightly and as a result Royalty dropping down, or whether Royalty was struggling a little bit more and as a result EXE couldn't thrive as much, that's up for debate. I'm not sure. But the point, in my opinion, they weren't as hot towards the end of 2020, early 2021. So this is a great opportunity for him. I think it's going to be a completely new project. He gets to reset and now continue to build on that platform that he's built over the past couple of months to get to this point. I mean, so early in his career, but so much potential. He's going to be one of the stars in this team, that's for sure. He needs to be set up as one of the young individuals. If I could compare him to Sonic, for example, crazy rifler, so much potential, needs to be set up, needs to have that support structure behind him, and then let's see what can happen. Give the man the tools, give him the opportunities, and I reckon EXE is going to be able to stand up to the plate in the long term. He's definitely a long-term prospect when it comes to South African Counter-Strike. I'm very excited for him, I must say. He's definitely been dubbed as one of those up-and-coming stars, locally speaking. So nothing really to say about EXE besides excitement, young gun, uncut diamond, so much to learn, so much potential. Amazing pickup. When you look at the theme and the direction that the Bravado team wanted to take here in terms of building this from the ground up, EXE was an amazing pickup, one of the best, hands down. I'm very chuffed to have seen them decided to pick up EXE. And then the last person in the team, Wipeout. Now for me, this is the biggest gamble. Wipeout hasn't actually really proven himself yet in a South African CSGO team. I mean, he's shown glimpses, right? I mean, he was a part of the Lionheart team for a little bit, where he, popped off for some maps, part of that Vindictive couple-week project, but still popped off. I mean, that was a small project. I think like Black Poison had started that up, and for Black Poison to see the potential in you is also obviously a great sign. So he played a little bit there, and then most notably was when he was picked up for the X Energy team, or for Energy at the time, and he competed there under P&D, and boy did he show potential. There were just some maps where he would completely take over the whole server, have at least double everybody else by halftime, and just rack up the frags without doing anything too crazy. It's not like he's, running around the map just taking everyone's heads off. It's just like where he is, if he's playing mid-dust CT side, he's just getting two picks every single round sort of thing with the rifle. Like, he's that type of individual who's just racking up consistent frags. And like I said, unproven, but from what we have seen in the short span of time, is this guy has crazy mechanical skill and a lot of potential to be absolutely explosive. So if that's, as I say, that was the theme here, that was the approach, that's what Bravado were looking for, those were the qualities and characteristics that they wanted in individuals, they've got that in heaps and bounds here with Wipeout. Like I said, he's just unproven. And to get yourself a spot on BVD without having really, played in any organization for a longer period of time before, that's quite crazy. BVD are the team who are at the top, who like to sort of scout and see who's been doing well and then feed that talent into their rosters, whereas now they're taking a gamble here with Wipeout. And I'm keen to see how it's going to be playing out. I mean, it's a good gamble to make because, like I said a couple times now, with the theme and the approach they wanted to take gambles. They wanted to find individuals who they could craft and mold into their vision, and they've got that with Wipeout. I'm keen to see how he's going to be progressing. As I've said, I don't think he's very outspoken, from some of the information I've heard as well from, some ex-teammates and whatnot. He's sort of the guy who you give him a job, you give him a role in the team, and he's going to be able to do that role. But he doesn't contribute too much when it comes to ideas, decision-making, direction. So that's sort of what I'm pooling Flexeee, EXE, and Wipeout into the same group here. Flexeee has that experience, but naturally he's not the most outspoken individual. So those three are going to be relying on, in my opinion, the man and Detrony to be the leaders in this team, to be the voices, to be the guys who are not shy of making decisions and making calls, and giving them the rudder, giving them the direction, being the rudder, and then allowing them to do the heavy lifting and the work, because that's what they're capable of. They can point and click, man. They can move that mouse fucking well. So you give them that role, you give them that job, and they're going to be capable of absolutely achieving it, no doubt in my mind. Very, very skilled individuals. So it's going to be about finding that balance, right? That's going to be the key here. All the firepower in the world, but on the scale, are they going to be able to match that with the synergy, the communication, the teamwork? Are these factors going to be, achievable? Because those are as important, if not more, than, somebody who's mechanically good at the game. What is the long term going to be here for this Bravado roster? All I can say is I'm excited to find out. I mean, is this team going to be sustainable? Are we going to be seeing changes? Is this the 5 that are going to be sticking together from the get-go all the way to the top here, which is the goal? Who knows? I mean, I think there's definitely potential. Wouldn't be entirely surprised if we saw a roster change, Not that I think any specific individual won't work, but it's quite rare that when you start a brand new project like this from the ground up and you don't have too much experience with the individuals you're bringing together, there are certain challenges that can come up along the way that you have to deal with. Some you're able to deal with in-house, some end up with replacements. So we'll have to see how this one ends up working out. But I do think that this team has every potential to be the best in the country, to go toe-to-toe with ATK, to sort of compete with them and push them off their mantle, their number one mantle, which no one was really even able to come close to doing in 2020, especially the second half in the year. So it's going to be amazing when you look at it from a local competitive South African point of view, where now we have a brand new player in the industry. I say brand new player. We've got one of the OG players coming back in the industry, BVD, here to stake their claim, make their mark, and fight for that top spot once again. And all I can say is, damn, I am excited. This team has got so much potential. Let's see what they're going to be achieving.